This program was produced by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for NOVA is provided by this station and by other public television stations. Additional funding is provided by grants from Exxon Corporation and the National Science Foundation.
November 1977. The Texas Heart Institute, Houston. The operating room of one of the most famous heart surgeons in the world, Denton Cooley. Each day, after an operating schedule that often runs as long as 12 hours, Denton Cooley speaks to the relatives of his patients. These patients come from all over the world to seek Cooley's services.
Start off in this Hatfield here.
Over a 30-year span, Cooley has been among the pioneers of open heart surgery, of heart surgery on babies, and of heart transplants.
We explored it looked like all the bleeding was coming from this area at the valve. As we resected, we took out a piece maybe 4 or 5 feet long. And we sent that over to the laboratory.
That much?
Mm-hmm. The Becker here? Mr. De Becker did very well.
The heart surgeon works in an atmosphere of life and death. Sometimes desperate measures must be taken to save life.
Thank you.
Cucinota?
Sometimes new techniques with life-saving potential, but unfamiliar risks are introduced. But who should judge when such a technique is ready for human trial? Denton Cooley describes making such judgments as having the courage to fail. But in 1972, just such an operation brought Cooley to trial. In 1969, Cooley had become the first surgeon in the world to implant an artificial heart in a patient.
Dr. Cooley, I show you plain as 59. Now, is that the article on the 7 calf experiments?
Yes, it is.
And was it those 7 experiments that gave you, as a cardiovascular surgeon, the knowledge that you could implant safely these devices in Mr. Karp?
They are the same experiments, but a different interpretation.
This is one of the few existing photographs of Haskell Karp, a printer's clerk from Skokie, Illinois. It was taken shortly before his death. He was the first and only human to have his own heart removed and replaced by an artificial heart. In this program, we are going to piece together Haskell Karp's story and look at the issues it raised. We are going to follow a story of intrigue and medical rivalry that preceded the use of the device. When revealed to Mrs. Karp, it led her to question Cooley's standards in court.
Dr. Cooley, do doctors who are reasonable physicians submit patients to experimental devices never having been used on a human before?
Obviously, yes.
And what is the criteria for the testing of this device in good medical practice insofar as its use upon a patient?
There are none.
There is none.
It's a matter of judgment and decision on the part of the investigator. Just as Mrs. Karp herself said, if you're out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, if someone throws a life preserver over to you, you don't examine that life preserver to see if there are flaws in it.
Cooley's claim was that the mechanical heart gave Mr. Karp a chance of life and that he fully consented to the operation. At first, Mrs. Karp had praised him effusively and publicly, but circumstances later were to change her mind.
I brought this lawsuit because of the poor judgment of Dr. Cooley, of a man who I put every trust into, and found out later that all these things he told me weren't true.
This is a film record of the artificial heart that was used in Mr. Karp. Haskell Karp had had 10 years of serious heart disease. He came to Dr. Cooley when his Chicago doctor said that there was no more they could do for him. The artificial heart was not an independent unit, but was powered and monitored by this large console. It was seen as a temporary measure before a human donor could be found for Mr. Karp. The device was used when Dr. Cooley judged that an operation, called a wedge operation, to save his own heart, had failed. In spite of the temporary nature of the device, the operation was treated by the press as one more breakthrough in a decade of technical triumphs. At a press conference, Dr. Cooley displayed the artificial heart and had this to say.
The possibility has now been established as a reality. The fact that Mr. Karp has regained organ function in terms of cerebral function and kidney function indicates that its mechanical heart is a feasibility. But there's much to be done now. It's much like embarking on the space program. We know that a rocket will go up off of the surface of the Earth, but we haven't set foot on the moon yet.
The operation on Mr. Karp made Cooley's international reputation. We asked Judith Swayze, professor of medical ethics at Boston University Medical School, to describe the motives of heart surgeons.
By and large, I think they are extremely proud, driven men. They're willing to take great risks with their patients and with themselves. They have what many of them call the courage to fail, both in terms of their own careers and in terms of the lives of their patients. And I think in part it's because many of them, and I think this is true of Dr. Cooley, see death as a very personal enemy. That the death of a patient is not a natural thing, not part of their disease state, but it's a personal failure. They, as a physician, have failed, and they will strive very heroically and very desperately to try and avoid the death of their patient.
The problem of finding a living human heart for Mr. Karp still had to be solved. As the anxious hours of the Easter weekend ticked by, no donor came forward. Then, 2.5 days after Mr. Karp's operation, St. Luke's Hospital arranged for Mrs. Karp to make this appeal on national television.
Someone somewhere, please hear my plea. A plea for a heart for my husband. I see him lying there, breathing, and knowing that within his chest is a man-made implement where there should be a God-given heart. How long can he survive? One can only guess. I cry without tears. I wait hopefully. Our children wait hopefully, and we pray. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh. Maybe somewhere there is a gift of a heart for my husband. Please.
Mrs. Karp's appeal was heard in rural Massachusetts by the relatives and doctors of Mrs. Barbara Ewan, who was in a coma. The relatives gave permission for her heart to be used, and she was flown to Houston in a jet ambulance sent by Dr. Cooley. On arrival, Mrs. Ewan was pronounced dead by 4 doctors from a stroke suffered en route. Her heart was given to Mr. Karp. For 64 hours, he had lived on the artificial heart. 31 hours later, he died. But why did Mrs. Karp change her mind about Dr. Cooley? As late as 4 months after her husband's death, she put out a press statement saying,
Dr. Cooley, in my opinion, did everything in his power to save my husband's life.
She did not at that time know what was being revealed in academic circles. A scientific paper showed that experiments with the artificial heart had been conducted on 7 calves before the operation on Mr. Karp. The authors dismissed the first 4 as total failures, described the 5th as living only 12 hours, the 6th, 8 hours, and the 7th as being no more than a cadaver in which the device pumped blood until the experiment was discontinued. The principal author of this article was the internationally famous heart surgeon, Michael DeBakey, also from Houston. The rivalry between DeBakey and Cooley was well known. The case of the artificial heart was to intensify that rivalry. DeBakey was the president of Houston's Baylor College of Medicine. Cooley held a part-time appointment under him at that college. DeBakey was in charge of a federal grant for an artificial heart program that had no plans for human trials. Cooley had no part in that program. How, then, had he come to use the artificial heart without DeBakey's knowledge? To find out, DeBakey set up a board of inquiry at Baylor College into the CARP operation. Had Baylor employees whose salary came from DeBakey's grant worked for Cooley? The man whose job was to design the heart in DeBakey's program was Dr. Liotta.
Dr. Liotta, you developed the heart under the auspices of the grant. Were you present at the operation?
Yes, and helped with the installation of the pump.
Was Dr. DeBakey informed?
I did not inform him because I did not want him to know about this collaboration. I did not feel that Dr. DeBakey would allow me this collaboration with Dr. Cooley.
Did Dr. Cooley say you were not to inform Dr. DeBakey?
Of course not.
Were you unaware of the committee that had to do with human experiments?
I became aware of it only after April 5th, 1969. It's not very clear in my mind.
And you've never been aware of this?
I do not think I was. We were not prepared to go to clinical application. I do not know whether Dr. Cooley would agree with me. It was a sort of an emergency. I examined the patient Thursday because I am in Dr. Cooley's service. Everybody was in agreement that this was a very bad case. But we were not planning to implant this in a human being. He was on the table when Dr. Cooley decided.
But it was all conveniently ready.
Yes.
Whose orders brought the pump from Baylor College to St. Luke's Hospital?
I brought them and left them in my briefcase all these days.
Then the investigators heard the plastics technician who worked under Dr. Liotta, Suzanne Anderson. What did she know about plans for human application? The investigator showed her a photograph of the heart used in Mr. Karp.
We made this heart in our plastics fabrication shop in March 1969. When Dr. Liotta asked me to put Dacron velour on the tubing, I knew it was for human use, since we did not do that for animal use. Dr. Liotta became very angry with me because of the way I was lining the pumps. And he said that I was going to kill someone since the lining was not perfect.
Thus, DeBakey's inquiry established that federally funded Baylor employees had been used in connection with the Karp operation. Those funds were subject to a system of peer review that protected human subjects from experimental procedures. The system was defined in guidelines set up by the National Institutes of Health. Judith Swayze.
The NIH guidelines in 1966 grew out of at least a decade and a half of concerns over the need to protect human subjects in medical research, beginning perhaps most dramatically with the trial of the Nazi physicians at Nuremberg in 1947. Since the Nuremberg trials, there had been a series of other documented cases in which the rights of human subjects had been violated, and in which very often the risks in a given experimental procedure quite clearly outweighed the possible benefits to the sick patients on whom they were being performed. For these reasons, the NIH enacted its guidelines, and there were very, very substantial and I think good reasons for their existence.
Dr. Cooley had not submitted his plans for review under the guidelines, but the guidelines were only compulsory for federally funded work. To obtain the power console, Dr. Cooley had approached an engineer, Bill O'Bannon. His salary normally came from DeBakey's grant, but O'Bannon agreed to do this work with Cooley's private funds. He built the power unit in his garage. But when asked to deliver it to a hospital, he wrote a specification saying it was not for human use. The specification was ignored. Next, DeBakey's own testimony showed that he had left Houston for Washington a few hours before Mr. Karp's operation. His purpose was to attend a conference on artificial hearts. Once there, he learned of the Karp operation performed by Dr. Cooley.
I think Dr. DeBakey's reaction when he first learned about the implant in Washington, very ironically, must have been a combination of a personal reaction and a professional reaction. I think given his very well-known relationship with Dr. Cooley, the fact that he'd invested many years of his career in building up a national artificial heart research program, he must have felt that Dr. Cooley really had performed a supreme act of one-upsmanship. As he saw it, given the results of the calf experiments, the best that could have been hoped for was to prolong Mr. Karp's death and certainly not to prolong his life in any significant fashion.
This is the device used in Mr. Karp and preserved in Houston by Dr. Cooley. At that time, any artificial surface would damage flowing blood, breaking up cells, leading to damage to other organs, the kidneys, the brain, the bone marrow. After a time, this damage becomes irreversible. And this is what DeBakey claimed had happened in the calf experiments. In a letter to the head of the Committee on Research Involving Human Beings at Baylor College, DeBakey stated that in many respects, the changes in Mr. Karp resembled those observed in the animal experiments. He continued,
"The absence of the evidence of the reversibility of the damage caused by the insertion of the device violates medical and scientific ethics."
At a press conference on April 11, 1969, Dr. Cooley described DeBakey's investigation as a witch hunt. Then, he wrote to Mrs. Karp,
"You may have heard about a controversy between Baylor and myself over the use of the artificial heart. This has caused me some personal inconvenience, but is not of any significance. I am sure that you can disregard most of this that you hear."
He ended by saying he hoped to see her again sometime. He did see her soon. In early September 1969, she was flown to Houston to appear in an NET documentary, The Heartmakers. It was at this time she released the press statement praising Cooley. But when she saw the program in her home, she was to change that opinion radically.
The Heartmakers, a report on man's search for a replacement for the human heart.
In the program, Mrs. Karp saw the host, David Prowett, outline the controversy between Cooley and DeBakey.
For the first time, we were able to demonstrate that an artificial device could maintain circulation in a human being for a period of more than 6 or 8 hours, which has been the limit with other devices.
We would never use a device that we had been experimenting with until we had, for human beings. We would not use a device or a drug on a patient dying in an operating room, for example, because it was in the experimental laboratory. If we felt that this device or drug might possibly be useful in human beings under the most dire circumstances, we would submit that through the proper procedure to a human research committee that we have.
In the program, Mrs. Karp was shocked to see film of her husband's heart actually being removed. Her case opened on June 13, 1972, with a chambers session before federal judge John Singleton.
All right, gentlemen. First, in the Karp case, I want to find out if you have a pretrial order that's been filed.
I have a pre-trial order to submit to the court, Your Honor. It has not been approved by anyone.
Well, can't you get together on an agreed pretrial order?
Judge, I don't think so. This pretrial order that's been submitted to us is nothing in the world but a rambling jury speech. And it doesn't, I don't think, comport with the orders that the court had in mind.
Now, counsel can correct me if this isn't true. But ever since I came into this case, Mr. Weatherly has totally refused to talk to me concerning the efforts to prepare a pretrial. He simply said, you submit what you want to me, and I'll submit what I want to. We cannot agree on anything.
Judge, all right. I know you don't want this thing to get off into personalities.
The principal lawyers present are John Holloway for Mrs. Karp, Tom Weatherly, senior trial lawyer of the prestigious firm of Vinson, Elkins, Searles, Connolly, and Smith for Dr. Cooley, Tom Weatherly's partner, Paul Stallings, Charles Boston representing Dr. DeBakey, and A.J. Watkins for Dr. Leota.
This case concerns an operation that has been discussed nationwide, both in magazines and newspapers. It concerns a doctor of some repute. And this court will not, and I say this to you, Mr. Holloway, will not, and I underline, will not permit this trial to be a circus, or permit this trial to be a vehicle through which any lawyer attempts to obtain some type of notoriety or publicity. Now, you can just start. That's for starters.
I'd like to make a statement, Your Honor. The court's reference to me trying to make a circus out of this trial.
I didn't say you were going to. I said you're not going to. I said we are not going to. Good, fine.
I assure this
If
court.
the shoe doesn't fit, then you shouldn't take offense.
Well, I do take offense.
Then the shoe must fit.
It is the duty of federal judges to play a strong role in the administration of the law. To prove malpractice, it is necessary to meet precise legal criteria. We asked George Annis, an attorney and professor in medicine and the law at Boston University Medical School, to define them. He sees Holloway's case as being in two parts.
The first one is an allegation of unlawful or unjustified human experimentation. And to prove that, he first has to prove that this was an experiment, not a therapeutic adventure, and then get in evidence as to what is the standard in the community in doing human experimentation. The second type of case he's trying is a traditional malpractice case. And the problem there is that almost all malpractice cases involve therapy. And to prove malpractice, he has to show a dereliction of duty that caused damages. And to do this, he's going to have to bring in expert testimony on the issue of what would a competent practitioner have done in a similar circumstance. And if the practitioner didn't do that, would that have caused damages?
The obvious expert for Holloway to call is Dr. DeBakey. This is what the judge had to say about the matter.
Now, I just finished telling you I will not allow you to exploit the dispute between Dr. DeBakey and Dr. Cooley. Insofar as this court can determine, Dr. DeBakey knows absolutely nothing about this operation. And to let you get some opinion from Dr. DeBakey about whether or not he, Dr. DeBakey, thinks that this mechanical heart should have been used at that time will not be permitted.
Your Honor, you might just as well dismiss this lawsuit.
I might
Because
do
the
that.
court's
I might
going to
well do
require
that.
me to try a case with Denton Cooley, a recognized heart specialist and surgeon using this device, and the only person in Houston who could counter any claim by Dr. Cooley is Michael DeBakey, who's equally eminent.
How could he counter?
In the same field, the same way any medical witness can determine whether the procedure would have been acceptable.
Okay. you may do that. You may ask Dr. DeBakey to look over the record and express an opinion as to whether or not he would have, whatever the proper question is. You can do that by deposition. What about that?
A deposition is pretrial evidence given by a witness to lawyers but without judge or jury. It is then at the judge's discretion to allow it before the jury. On June 15th, DeBakey appeared.
Dr. DeBakey, as the supervisor of the college here, did you authorize either Dr. Leota or Dr. Cooley to use the mechanical heart in Mr. Kopp?
No.
Would you have done so?
No.
Well, why not, Dr. DeBakey?
Because, I wouldn't have authorized its use for any human use, because at that point in time, the experiments that we had performed with the device did not lead us to feel that it could be used on a human being. And therefore, we concluded, as we did in the article we wrote on it, that human experimentation must await unequivocal evidence of the safety and effectiveness of such a device.
DeBakey then elaborated.
What we called blood interface, the contact of blood with material that constitutes the artificial heart. That blood has to come in contact with that pumping device, with the interior of it, and that so far we have not yet developed a blood interface that is compatible with blood. Over a period of time, the blood is destroyed by that blood interface.
You said, our goal, you see, is to extend life. What Dr. Cooley did was to extend death.
Well, I was referring to what I have published here, really, and that is that the animal experiments that we have done clearly demonstrated, and subsequent animal experiments that we have since done, that there is a pattern of progressive deterioration in these animals from the time you implant this mechanical device until there is no longer any viable function in the body, whether it be of the brain or kidneys or lungs. Now, this occurs over a period of hours.
On June 19th, 1972, the trial opened after the selection of the jury. They have heard nothing of what we have heard so far.
Does the plaintiff care to make an opening statement, Mr. Holloway?
I would like to make a short opening statement, Your Honor.
All right. Please make it brief, concise, non-argumentative.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, the court has told you that this is a matter of notoriety in the past. And I will simply try as Mrs. Kopp's attorney to do our level best to show you and present to you the evidence which we feel will prove the claims and contentions of the plaintiff. Now, the first is relatively simple. Does a human being who no longer has the ability to sustain life have a right to die a natural and uncomplicated death? Or may he be subjected to human experimentation by doctors who are employed to treat him? Now, we will hope to prove that Dr. Cooley was a member of the faculty of Baylor University and was obligated to abide by the rulings of that institution in matters of human experimentation. Secondly, if a surgical procedure is necessary, that no doctor improperly influence a patient in the use of drastic devices which could cause that patient needless pain and suffering. Now, thirdly, there is a complaint which involves a sum of $2 million. Our allegation is that the surgery was grossly negligent and was fraudulently done in the case of Mr. Kopp's rights. And this asks for what the law calls punitive damages. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Does the defendant care to make a statement now? Or you want to reserve your statement for the defendant's case?
Well, if the court please, we will speak briefly in response to that with respect to what we think the proof will show about Dr. Cooley.
All right. Make it short, concise, non-argumentative.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in your honor, on behalf of Dr. Cooley, The proof in this case will show that as a result of the multiple heart problems that had persisted for a decade, patient Haskell Karp suffered from end-stage or terminal heart disease. The proof will show that for more than 6 months he had not worked and that he was not able to work and support his family. The fact that proof will show is that this man could not comb his hair or brush his teeth without being winded. The proof will show that he was dissatisfied with his condition as an invalid. And the proof will, at this point, also show, when we get down to the operative procedures, that death was imminent in this patient before any surgical procedure was done by anyone. The proof will show, in response to the statements just made to you, that the patient desired that his life be saved and prolonged. The consent to surgery will be in evidence before you. The consent is written, and that in addition to the written consent, that Dr. Cooley personally had long conversations with this patient to explain to him in detail the risks involved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Two very different positions for the jury to assess. The defense is arguing that Dr. Cooley prolonged Mr. Karp's life. Holloway, that the operation was negligent and a human experiment.
Mrs. Karp, during the 38 days that your husband had been in the hospital, had he been ambulatory, up and about in the halls?
Oh, definitely. We'd go downstairs into the lobby. We even went into the cafeteria once. He had a haircut there.
Had he left the hospital on any weekend passes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, the fact of the business, the operation was on the morning of April 4th, 1969. But in fact, Mr. Karp had actually left the hospital on March 31st on such a pass, hadn't he?
Yes, sir.
Now, up until the night before surgery, the night when Dr. Cooley came in, to the best of your knowledge, had your husband been advised that death was imminent?
There was no such indication.
Now, what happened the afternoon that Dr. Cooley came in?
When Dr. Cooley came in, he said, "I have a paper here for you to sign for Mr. Karp's surgery." And I looked at him and I said, "Why do you want to operate? You know, tomorrow after keeping us here so long." And he said, "Mr. Karp has taken a sudden turn for the worse. His aneurysm is about to burst." He said, "I don't know whether we can even wait till tomorrow." And I said to him, "You once told me, Dr. Cooley, that..." Pardon me a moment. That you thought he needed a transplant. And Dr. Cooley said to me, "Mrs. Karp, there is a donor heart that will be available and that we will use it if there's that need for it." Now, he handed me the piece of paper. That is, he pointed it to me. And all of a sudden, I came across some sort of mechanical device. I said, "Dr. Cooley, what's this thing here that you have?" I said, "What's mechanical device?" And he said, "Well, you know, Mrs. Karp, when we operate on a heart, we have to take the heart out of the body. So what we do is use what's commonly known as a heart-lung machine." So he said that the reason that he put that into the consent was that this here one was a new model, and it was proven in the laboratory, but it hasn't been used on a human being yet. But that this should sustain him if he should die on the table.
It is the tactic of the defense to undermine Mrs. Karp's credibility. To do so, they will put on exhibit the manuscript of a book she had written when approached by Jack O'Grady, the producer of the Heartmakers program. A.J. Watkins for Dr. Liotta.
I'm going to hand you something. You know what I'm going to hand you already?
Yes.
I take it that these are your own words. Am I accurate in that belief?
Yes, what I say by my own words. These are the words that I had put down here. But these are the emotional feelings that I was told I would have to express in order to get a book. That it has to be packed with emotion.
I understand.
That it has to get to people.
I understand, all right. Well, I say I understand. I don't really know such matters, but I accept your explanation.
You must also understand, sir, that I have only had a high school education and I have no literary background whatsoever.
Well, it starts out May 1, 1968. Skokie Valley Community Hospital, Skokie, Illinois. In the early hours of the morning, I waited in the visitors' area for what seemed like an eternity, pacing the floor. While waiting, an emergency code 99 shrieked through the hospital's loudspeaker. At that moment, I cried, "He is dead." Panic set in, and it was this panic that had prevailed in our lives. Did you write that?
Yes, I wrote that.
Deterioration was quite evident even to a layman, and most of all to Haskell. Was that true?
Again, may I say, this is an outline, and I was supposed to have put emotion into it.
She was further cross-examined by Tom Weatherly for Dr. Cooley.
It was 6 months before you ever had any qualms about the fact that Dr. Cooley had done the best job in the world. Isn't that true?
I wanted to believe that he was honest and above board with me because I had to maintain my sanity.
All right. And that's something that triggered a distrust. Some picture you saw on NET television, is that correct?
Right.
All right. But your idea that resulted in this lawsuit was not conceived as a result of something you saw or observed yourself. It was based on what someone else told you through film or propaganda, wasn't it?
Sir, I thought I had better start reading and seeing what was happening. I felt that Dr. Cooley had deceived me. And I started reading articles about the controversies involved.
Well, it's your real quarrel with Dr. Cooley that when he found out that your husband's heart he couldn't make it by itself. He didn't pull the cord on him and let him die. Is that what you were quarreling with him about here today before this court jury?
I am quarreling with Dr. Cooley because he used my husband for human experimentation and put him on display to the world.
Well, now, this part about on display to the world, let's inquire about that a minute. There's nobody put your husband on display to the world more than you yourself have done. Isn't that true, Mrs. Cobb?
I didn't intend to put my husband on display to the world.
Is this a release by you in which you authorize his body to be viewed in this operation all over the civilized world or not?
No, this is not to display my husband's body.
All right. Let's read it. Let's read it. The Heartmakers. Now, that is a picture of your husband's bloody operation,
We are going to object to that, Your Honor.
I'll sustain objection to that statement.
All right, I'll withdraw that statement.
Just a second. Let's don't have any more statements like that.
That's right. Here is a grant in which it says, I agree that this national education television program may be edited as desired and used in whole or in part for educational broadcast, for instructional audio-visual exhibition, and for other non-commercial purposes in perpetuity. Signed, Mrs. Cobb.
They did not tell me that my husband's operation would be exploited on television. What they told me was that this was an entirely scientific show that will explain artificial organs, which... This is what I was told.
When a patient submits to an operation, in law, he technically gives permission for his body to be assaulted. That permission or consent must be informed.
Dr. Cooley, you have heard used in this court two words, informed consent. Now, when you intend to perform surgery which involves some risk to a patient, is it accepted procedure among medical doctors in this community to advise the patient of that risk to secure a consent for surgery?
Within certain boundaries, of course. With logical boundaries, of course. But not every contingency can be explained to the layman about the threat and the risk of open heart surgery, or the type of device which we are using. So, by and large, the patient must have confidence in the surgeon to do what's in his own best interest. Otherwise, Mr. Karp would not have been in Houston.
Now, what did you tell Mr. Karp about the mechanical device you intended to use to sustain his life in the event of his death on the operating table?
Well, in the first place, Mr. Holloway, I explained it to him in the best way I could explain it to a layman.
Well, you explain it to me the best way you can at this time.
I'll try. I'll do my best. I told him it was a heart pump similar to the one that we used in open heart surgery, that it was a reciprocating type pump with the membrane, in which the pumping element never became in contact with the bloodstream, and that it was designed in such a manner that it would not damage the bloodstream, or it would cause minimal damage to the bloodstream, and that it would be placed in his body to take over the function of the dead heart and to propel the blood throughout his body during this interim until we could have a heart transplant. I mean, does that explain it?
Not to me, Dr. Cooley.
We're not interested in any information to you, Mr. Holloway. I want to make that very clear. We're interested in an explanation to the jury. This court could care less whether you understand it or you do not.
In a long section of testimony, Dr. Cooley went on to tell the jury what he told Mr. Karp. He held his line that it was an emergency operation for the patient's benefit. When Holloway pushed the word experimental, Dr. Cooley said that the term normally used with patients was in an investigative phase.
Did you tell him it could cause any damage to his body?
No, but Mr. Holloway, I don't tell any patient who's having heart surgery that this machine is going to hurt their kidneys, that it might cause tubular necrosis, it might cause liver damage, it may affect his lung, give him pump lung. We don't go into those matters. The patients assume that what we're using for them would be in their best interest, and they're willing to accept the fact that it is an aggressive effort to benefit them.
This is the written consent that Mr. Karp signed. I, Haskell Karp, authorize Dr. Denton A. Cooley to perform upon me cardiac surgery for advanced cardiac decompensation and myocardial insufficiency as a result of numerous coronary occlusions. The risk of this surgery has been explained to me. In the event cardiac function cannot be restored by excision of destroyed heart muscle and death seems imminent, I authorize Dr. Cooley and his staff to remove my diseased heart and insert a mechanical cardiac substitute. It went on to say that the mechanical device would not be permanent, that the device had been tested in the laboratory but had not been used to sustain a human being, and that no assurance had been made by anyone as to the results that might be obtained. In law, the standards for informed consent vary. George Annis.
If you consider the case to be a human experimentation case, the consent was woefully inadequate. It didn't meet any of the criteria set out under any guidelines, federal guidelines, international law guidelines, or any other type of guidelines that were available at this time for a fair and complete explanation of the procedure involved, an explanation of the risks that were involved, the likelihood of success in this case, what would happen if the procedure was not successful, and what the results of animal experiments had been up to this point. It also didn't make it clear just how extraordinary this procedure was, how unusual an experiment this was. So under all those criteria, one would have to say that the consent form used in this case, if the case is considered as an experiment, is simply not adequate.
Earlier, the jury had heard Mrs. Karp's testimony that her husband's condition had not deteriorated before the operation. So Holloway should have a strong case that Mr. Karp had been the uninformed subject of a surgical experiment. This is hardly consistent with what the jury is about to hear from Holloway's first expert witness, the anesthesiologist, Dr. Keats.
Dr. Keats, was there a point in time before Mr. Karp's chest was opened that you, as anesthesiologist attending this man, believed death to be imminent?
Yes, sir.
When?
When he came to the operating room.
When he came to the operating room?
When he came to the operating room.
Now, what made you believe that, Dr. Keats?
He was brought to the operating room in his bed, and he was in great distress. He was having difficulty breathing. He was pale, and he was sweaty. I was afraid he was going to expire in the hall. We therefore rushed him into the operating room where we could give him oxygen. At that same time, we notified Dr. Cooley we had better go on with this operation as expeditiously as possible. Otherwise, the patient may not last long enough to have the operation.
Dr. Keats then went on to describe the surgery. He stated that so much of Mr. Karp's heart had been cut out in the first wedge operation that its function could not be restored. Holloway interpreted this as meaning that there was a deliberate plan to test the artificial heart in Mr. Karp. Dr. Keats interpreted the matter rather differently for the defense.
Doctor, if I get your testimony as I have listened, in your opinion as a physician, Mr. Karp's death was imminent on 2 occasions while you attended him. Is that true?
One on his arrival to the operating room.
Correct.
Yes.
And next, after the wedge operation, when he tried to get what was left of his heart to take over the pumping operations.
Yes.
And it wouldn't do it. Was his death imminent at that time?
Yes.
All right. So on 2 occasions, Haskell Karp was confronted with imminent death. And on each occasion, he was saved by devices that you gentlemen out at Medical Center had to save lives. Is that true, sir?
Yes.
I believe that's all.
The jury then heard long argument about the cause of Mr. Karp's death. The pathologist stated he died from pneumonia and renal failure. Had the artificial heart caused these? Holloway was unable to satisfy the legal requirement of proving that the artificial heart was the proximate, the direct and responsible cause of death. However, he still held his trump card, Dr. DeBakey. On the 8th day of the trial, the judge allowed him to testify at this closed session.
Dr. DeBakey, as indicated in the deposition, did you or any doctor or technician under your supervision and control test the pump that was placed in Mr. Karp? Now, I don't mean the exact pump, but test a similar type of pump.
Now, that's the pump. We want to get to the exact pump.
That's right. I don't know what exact pump he used in Mr. Karp, you see. The only thing I can tell you is that from the descriptions that were published in the scientific journals, the pump used was similar to the ones that we have developed. But I can't speak about the use of it in Mr. Karp because I was not there and had no knowledge of its use and therefore did not see it being used.
Then, to the best of your knowledge and information, is that the pump that was manufactured by Mrs. Anderson in your laboratories?
Well, I can't say specifically that this one was manufactured in our laboratory because I don't know that. I can only tell you that the ones that were made in our laboratory are similar in appearance to this.
All right, then, Dr. DeBakey. As of April 1969, was it bad medical practice to place a mechanical heart in experimental surgery in a human being to test that device?
Well, I can't speak about whether or not it's bad medical practice because we are not, in a sense, able to put this type of development in medical practice.
Okay, Dr. DeBakey, let me approach this in a different way. An article in the Houston Chronicle, September 12th, 1969, refers to a letter written by you to the Baylor Committee, in which it says, and it states the issue with brutal frankness, and I quote, "The absence of the reversibility of the damage caused by the insertion of the device not only challenges the use of the device as a stopgap measure, but also violates medical and scientific ethics." Did you write such a letter?
I don't remember that.
Did you make such a statement?
As I say, I don't recall that.
Did you say that what Dr. Cooley did was not only unethical, it was immoral, and it was a betrayal?
Did I say
Yes,
that?
sir.
No, I don't remember saying anything like that. Where are you quoting that from? A magazine article?
Yes, but I just wanted to find out if you said such a thing.
No.
That's all, Your Honor.
Dr. DeBakey's reluctance to testify in open court at the trial of Dr. Cooley was a very typical one of physicians who are notoriously reluctant to go public with charges against their colleagues. Very often, I think they feel there, but for the grace of God, go I. The reason there are so many external regulations over medicine today is because doctors have been notoriously bad at regulating the behavior of their fellow physicians. They've been called a professional delinquent community in terms of their ability to control each other's behavior. I think Dr. DeBakey also must have felt that if he did testify in open court for the public record, anything he said would have been interpreted in terms of the personal rivalry between himself and Dr. Cooley, and he didn't want to get into that element in the public arena of a court.
Holloway now found himself caught in an argument that was like a spiral. The defense's logic was that the operation could not be malpractice because it had succeeded in prolonging life. Holloway's argument was that the Baylor investigation showed the operation to be a human experiment, and that constituted malpractice. But, said the defense, if it was not malpractice, it could not be human experimentation. To the judge, they argued that if it was not an experiment, then the consent was adequately informed. And if the consent was adequately informed, and the artificial heart not the proximate cause of death, then Holloway had no facts for the jury to rule on, only the law for the judge to interpret. Through over 1,000 pages of testimony, Holloway found himself caught in this spiral, while facing a judge who clearly was convinced that the operation was therapeutic.
I mean, what I'm faced with is that I cannot, and you've not given me any yet, cannot see any evidence, any substantial evidence that would allow this jury to intelligently discuss an issue of informed consent. I can see where if I submitted that to the jury could sit back there and argue about what they as laymen might understand this procedure to be. But we have not in this case met what Texas has adopted as a legal standard on informed consent, and that is that the burden is on you by expert medical evidence. And I'll be dadgum if I can see where we're headed.
Your Honor, there's a whole record full of evidence there. And I will not sit here. I'm not going to stay here any longer and answer the court's question from the standpoint of what the evidence is. If you keep telling me that that is not evidence.
All you want to do is to make a mountain out of a molehill. Because this is a mechanical heart and the first one placed in anybody either then or now. And all you want to do is take that one situation and build a case on it. So you're trying to build a case on the fact that this is the first and only mechanical heart implant. And that's all you're trying to do. And that's not factual. It is factual that this is the first and only mechanical heart implant. But what is not factual is the cause of the proximate cause of the man's death as a result of any of these things you talk about.
3 months later, in the federal courthouse in Houston, Judge Singleton dismissed the case against Cooley and Liotta. Holloway took the case to appeal, but the appeal court supported Judge Singleton. Holloway then took the case to the Supreme Court, But they did not hear it. The Supreme Court has never heard a case of medical malpractice or human experiment. Meanwhile, research into artificial hearts continues. Devices for assisting the heart after surgery have been used. But most researchers feel a total replacement heart is a thing of the future. In addition, there is a moratorium on heart transplants. Of the participants in the case, all but two agreed to see us, Mrs. Karp and Dr. DeBakey at Methodist Hospital. He told us that everything he had to say on the case was in the public record. At St. Luke's, Denton Cooley continues his highly successful practice. To many people, he is a legend as one of the most brilliant heart surgeons in the world. We asked him if he felt vindicated by the result of the court case.
No, as a matter of fact, I think that we proved our point, and very clearly, that people do not have to die in the operating room during heart surgery. This man that we operated on some 9 years ago was a man who ostensibly died in the operating room. And we chose to do something to prolong his life in the hope that we could ultimately salvage his life. And the artificial heart which we used kept him alive for 3 days until we could get a heart transplant done. In the future, hopefully, we have a better artificial heart to use, and might be more accessible to a satisfactory donor. And those two features become available, and this technique of the two-stage replacement of the heart would become a clinical reality. Start off. Is Miss Hatfield here? He's all right, Miss Hatfield. He's going back to the recovery room. We explored him. It looked like all the bleeding was coming from this area, his valve. We resected, we took out a piece maybe 4 or 5 feet long. And we sent that over to the laboratory.
That much?
Mm-hmm. DeBecker here? Mr. DeBecker did very well. And then we replaced his valve. You see him at 8 o'clock tonight.
Good. And he's doing fine.
Fine, no problem.
Thank you.
Cucinotta? Very good. No problem.
Oh, yes.
Very difficult operation, but we did the 3 bypasses. We repaired the mitral valve.
Wouldn't you do 4 bypasses?
Well, the one was a very small vessel, and so it was not necessary. We did the 3 main ones, 3 big ones.
And did you do the other operation too?
Did the valve, and then we took out his gallbladder. His gallbladder was very bad. A lot of stones and all shrunken, scarred, and so on.
Yes, but you took them off too?
Took out the gallbladder.
Oh, yes.
See him at 8 o'clock tonight.
Yes, and he's good.
Very good. We'll send him back to Sicily in good condition. All right. Now, who had a book they wanted me to sign?
Here.
All right. Okay, good. Let me have one at a time. Not here.
For a transcript, send $2 to this address. This program was produced by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for NOVA is provided by this station and by other public television stations. Additional funding is provided by grants from Exxon Corporation and the National Science Foundation.